A continuation on the light and justice discussion, specifically on interiors. In 2024, we are transitioning our coffee break series into a slightly longer lunch break series. And these sessions will take place on the third or fourth Friday from noon to 12:45 or around about. So we are really proud to introduce this series today. For upcoming Missouri Gateway Green Building Council events, we have the first Friday webinar, March 1st, on LEAVE version 5, Swift Climate Action, Enriched Quality of Life, and Advanced Land Use and Biodiversity. On the 5th, the St. Louis Owner and Operator Series for Energy Audits for Optimal Building Investments. And I have a feeling the Building Energy Exchange will be the cohort for that. On March 7th, the emerging professionals have their monthly happy hour, and it will be at Bailey's Range in Shaw. I've been to that restaurant, they have amazing burgers. And on March 12th, our next evening program, Selling the Value of Sustainable Homes. And this is in partnership with the St. Louis Realtors Urban Affairs Committee. And that will be at the Missouri Foundation for Health, where we had our February evening program. So certainly RSVP for that and a lot more on our website. If you have not signed up to really take advantage of the full benefits of it, please do so. And it's just a great tool with abundance of resources and blog posts, etc. Now to our program, do a little intro about the light and justice movement. In 2020, they coined the term light and justice as the title and subject of numerous presentations and published articles exploring the unjust impacts of bad lighting and opportunities for the lighting industry to overcome those social and environmental inequities. As they have come to define it, light justice is the practice of planning, designing, implementing, and investing in good lighting for under-resourced communities through a process of stakeholder engagement and community-supported placemaking. And we have our two phenomenal speakers this afternoon. First will be Laia Schaffer Osborne, and she is a multidisciplinary designer, writer, and advocate for design justice. She is a co-founder of lightjustice.org, a community resource for addressing the social impact of lighting. She also serves as the North America Regional Director for Unoli Lighting Design, or if I said that Unoli correctly, where for the past 7 years contributed to a wide range of projects and award-winning design efforts on both sides of the Pacific. And secondly, we have Shelley Sackney-Meyer, and she is an award-winning interior designer at Space Architects and Designers and Builders, excelling in hospitality interior design. Shelley's work has been recognized by the American Institute of Architects St. Louis and Mid-Missouri, the American Society of Interior Design Missouri East, and local shelter magazines. Shelley is committed to designing for comfort, wellness, and sustainability, and she always endeavors to create timeless spaces that will not need to be stripped of trendy materials and lighting in a few years to remain beautiful. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Laia, who I believe will be speaking first. And Laia, take it away.
Thank you so much, David. My name is Leah Schaefer Osborne, and I am wondering, Maeve, did we want to wait another couple minutes for other folks to show up? Or I know that this will be recorded, so hopefully we'll have a chance to share after. Oh, I think you're muted.
Let's go ahead, Leah.
Okay, wonderful. Great. So let me share my screen. This was the technical difficulty we had earlier. I don't know that you want to see my notes. I think you want to hear me speak. So let me see if this works out. Okay. I'm hopeful. All right, do you see it? Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. And this is the, let's see. Oh, I didn't troubleshoot successfully. I thought I could see my notes. I apologize. Maybe give me one more second.
No worries.
No worries.
No. Beauty of technology. There's always something happens. So
I know. I was actually really happy in the background here. I was like, I figured it out. I did it. Oh goodness. Well, actually, in that case, because I want to respect everybody's time, I don't want to be troubleshooting. Um, I was wondering, Shelley, would you mind sharing first, just for a little background? I'm going to be presenting a bit of the overview of light, and the design of light and its role in society and both interior and exterior spaces. But I think, I've been really looking forward to hearing and seeing what projects you would be sharing with us, Shelley. So if you don't mind sharing first, maybe then I can sort of offer a little bit of that background after and
For
give it
sure.
context.
Happy to do it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Mute. Bum. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, David and Maeve, for inviting me and putting in the work to host this series. This is a fantastic resource, and I didn't know it existed until a few weeks ago. So I'm so happy to be a part of this and to attend future lunch breaks. Light Justice has articulated what we hope to do in all of our work. And the organization is so well laid out, measurable steps to make good lighting an egalitarian effort for us as designers. We at Space are just now learning about this movement, and we still have lots to learn, obviously, but I hope you'll find our experience useful and valuable in your work. Space works in several sectors, typically hospitality, residential, and corporate, but we're most known for our hospitality work, and that's what I'm going to focus on today in this little presentation. And I'm just checking the clock to make sure I stay on time for everybody. From the paper Leah co-authored, there are 4 concrete ways to practice equitable lighting: prioritize daylight and views, invest in backup house spaces, seek low big projects, and recognize excellence in equitable lighting. Every hospitality project incorporates the top 3 steps. And I realize that low bid is likely meant in the spirit of public or civic projects, but hospitality projects are usually very tight budget. We love this project type, and we consider it a chance to democratize good design since so many people get to enjoy restaurant interiors. Most of our restaurants are small. We don't work for any large national corporations that have big budgets. So a lot of times there's family life savings on the line. Construction's expensive, but so is the complex mechanical and equipment needs back in the kitchen, not to mention all the soft goods and tens of thousands of dollars of furniture that usually goes with it too. So restaurants are complicated and can be very expensive spaces. We view our job is to educate the restaurateur and be good stewards of their investment to elevate the experience, both for diners, but also for staff as best we can. Although one of many instruments in our toolbox, lighting is one of the most important. So let's look at some kitchens. We did not do this restaurant, but this is a restaurateur's dream kitchen. This is Fäviken, located in rural Sweden. Although it was closed in 2019, I've always loved the fact that this kitchen has a window looking out on the countryside. The natural light is beautiful, but they've also elevated the level of finish with ceramic tile and stainless steel on the walls. The window is incredibly rare. Kitchens can take up about 33% of the floor space in a kitchen, and they're usually buried in the core of the building to maximize wall space and storage and having it close to infrastructure. So this window was very deliberate and likely very much appreciated by the staff. Fäviken is a closed kitchen, so it's not open to the dining room. So the only people enjoying this window are the people who actually work in this kitchen. So this is one of our projects. This is Pastaria. Open kitchens have helped provide a nicer work environment for back of house staff. Because diners can see into the kitchen, the level of finish is higher than usual, and the lighting is better, so there is no light pollution going between the kitchen and the dining room. Pastaria has a lovely open kitchen, and this this photograph is fantastic because you can kind of see that, you know, the Kelvin of the lights in the kitchen is very similar to the Kelvin out in the dining room. The kitchen staff in this particular restaurant is able to receive natural light because just opposite them are all of the windows that look out onto the streetscape. We've had, you know, just tangentially, we've had chefs in the past require 2,700 Kelvin incandescent lights be used in the kitchen, particularly at the pass, right where food is going out to the kitchen, to ensure the food leaving looks the same way guests receive it at their table. That's very important to some of the chefs. And, you know, 10, 15 years ago, the request for an incandescent light wasn't unreasonable because a lot of the times the LEDs couldn't hit that color temp reliably, but now we've been pleased with how much they've improved since then. And so here's another image. So you can see the level of finish is just much nicer than what you would expect in a typical restaurant kitchen. This is Publico. This behind the chef there is a brick wood-fired oven and smoker. So this was very unusual at the time. This kitchen features a drywall ceiling with nice recessed can lights. On the right, that is actually a stainless steel wall. And then there's fun touches in here. Like on the left, there's, you know, photographs of Johnny Cash. On the right, they used a toolbox to actually store some of their tools. So it's not a strictly utilitarian environment. They have the fun flourishes like the flowers and other things to look at. So yes, partially it's for the guests who are seated there, but also it's for the chef who is working there, because this is the prep kitchen and this is, you know, the hotline. Everything is right here. This is the kitchen in the restaurant. This is Bull Rush in the Grand Center Arts District. And the chef is kind of the star in this situation because the chef is preparing your food right there in the center. We called it the dining theater. You're seated all the way around the chef. However, the food is all prepped in a separate kitchen in the back of the house. And then Mission Taco. So a lot of St. Louisans know about Mission Taco. Again, this isn't a traditional kitchen. And I have to apologize. We don't have tons of pictures of completed kitchens for whatever reason. They're busy and we don't want to get in their way going back there and taking photos. But this is interesting because this actually has a wall glass that looks out onto an arcade. So while people are playing video games, they can look at tortilla production. So obviously the level of finish is a little bit nicer. They have a concrete floor, but the lights are of nice quality. They're not like blazing hot, you know, 5,000 or 6,000 Kelvin light fixtures. And it's a warm and cozy environment. So open kitchens require a bit of theater because diners never actually see the whole kitchen. So this is another restaurant we did. And in the blue is what a diner can actually see. But in the meantime, you have all this other real estate over here that is not visible. You know, the prep areas, the dish pit, the walk-in, dry storage, they're all hidden. We're starting to see a trend away from the open kitchens because they're kind of tough to maintain. You know, like, you know, think about when you're making Thanksgiving dinner at home, the kitchen's a mess and you don't want people, it's hard to keep that up. So, and then it also limits your seating options because you have an entire wall that you can't really do much with. You can't put four tops or, you know, tables right up against that because you're trying to preserve that view. So what is a good compromise? So this is a restaurant we're working on now that is under construction, and we think they've done a fantastic job of having a closed kitchen, but it's still providing an elevated environment for the staff. It's the new Bartolino's restaurant over in Twin Oaks, and the family who owns this has been in the restaurant industry for decades, and they know the value of keeping a staff happy and comfortable when they're working. So things that they've done to elevate this space. They have higher quality flat panel lights that are in the kitchen. So 3,500K, they're a little bit brighter than what we have out in the dining room, but it has a 90 CRI, so it's good lighting. In years past, we probably, not in my tenure, but in years past, you'd probably have fluorescent troughers in the kitchen, and that light is not good. And then when the ballasts start to poop out, they get all flickery and It's not a great work environment. And I went back looking at old kitchen plans, and as far back as I could see, we have been specifying LEDs, usually like in the between 3,000 and 4,000 Kelvin, depending on what the restaurant wants. But other elements that are in this space, instead of using white FRP, they have requested to use stainless steel on the walls because it's a beautiful reflective surface and it is just a nicer finish, even though not one customer is going to see this space. This is for the benefit of the staff. And what is also notable is the flooring that they're using in here. They're using something called Protectol. EcoGrip is another brand. But it is a resilient kitchen floor that's heat welded. There's no grout lines. It's self-coping, slip resistant, and most notably, it has a little bounce. So it's comfortable for people to stand, for 8, 10, 12-hour shifts in the kitchen. So we think that this is a model of what a nice kitchen could be. And we really hope to get some photos of it when it's all done because it's going to be an incredible kitchen. So we consider the experience for both staff and guests in the front of house. We regularly try to work directly with managers and servers to learn pain points for flow, lighting, furniture, materials to ensure the design works for the people who work in the spaces every day. For guests, we view restaurants as little mini vacations. So we endeavor to make sure that every detail is comfortable and accessible for anyone who would visit the restaurant. And in this image, you'll notice that there's different levels of lighting, and as best we can, we try to incorporate this into every space. So this was a renovation we just did last year, and this bar used to be in the very, very back of the restaurant, and it was a place where it was very popular. The bar is where people in this restaurant hang out. So we've moved it to the exterior wall so everybody can get more of that sunlight. And we have ceiling lighting, we have sconces, and at dinner time, they also use candles on the table. So you have all these different levels of lighting. And beyond selecting durable, easily cleanable materials and attempting to anticipate high traffic areas, we outfit every open to structure restaurant with track lighting. It doesn't need to be on all the time, but the light is there for late night cleaning. Decorative lights at their highest brightness on the dimmer never quite put out enough light for effective cleaning. So we just want to make sure that the staff can see all the nooks and crannies so they can get out of there as quickly as they can. Even in non-open structure spaces, we ensure we have enough lights present that are suitably dimmed during service to make cleaning efficient. Control for users. So many cozy romantic restaurants can be very dark at nighttime. So it's nice to give guests a way to read menus without getting their cell phones out. These little rechargeable LED lamps are fantastic. You can put those on the tables, charge them up overnight when the restaurant is closed, but then diners can turn up the light a little bit to see the menu, to place their order, and then turn it back down after they've ordered. So it's just a nice way to give diners a little bit of ownership in the restaurant too, and especially like older people who may struggle more with that. And all lights in the entire restaurant are all on dimmers, so staff can alter the lights throughout the day, for daytime service versus evening service, just to create nice ambiance throughout the day. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I mean, how absolutely inspiring. I have to say, like one thing that I've been so impressed by and so encouraged by is, how much is already being done and already being considered in our design practices. Folks like you, it's always so encouraging to see like these aren't new considerations for so many of us, right? We know that in designing for humans, there are certain things we should be, building into our designs, front of house and back of house. And I think more than anything, what I and my colleagues at Light Justice are hoping to do is create more of a platform for us to be sharing with each other how we're already considering the people who are impacted by our designs. And I think that hopefully will continue to offer all of us a sense of possibility in continuing with this work. I think I finally figured out. So let me pull up my slides here. Okay, here we go. All right, how's it looking? Great. Okay, so yeah, I'm so honored to be invited here to talk with you all. Thank you again to Lisa and to Maeve. Thank you to David for having me here to share with you all today. And again, I've been so encouraged to hear, the conversation going on in St. Louis right now. As David mentioned, I'm a lighting designer. I'm also a writer and a community advocate. I have my backgrounds in both lighting design and interior design. And so I think from the very beginning, chatting with Edward Bartholomew and Mark Loeffler, my two colleagues at Light Justice, um, even though I think their initial focus was on lighting outdoors, I very much from the beginning was thinking, okay, how do we also talk about the impact of lighting indoors? Because so many of us spend so much of our time, we really do, statistically spend most of our time inside built environments. So I was really excited that we were, beginning to move this conversation to the indoor spaces. Just very briefly, I'm going to do sort of a run through here. Light justice is the practice of planning, designing, implementing, and investing in good lighting for humanity and the natural world. We say that this is through basically a process of stakeholder engagement and ideally community supported placemaking. So there's the voice of the community who's impacted as well. And honestly, throughout history, light has been used not only to serve people, but also more negatively, sometimes to suppress and oppress vulnerable communities. I think it's meaningful to look at this broader context in this history, because when we trace these social injustices from the past to the present, we can more really clearly see, how the continued misuse of light, or maybe not thinking about light's impact, really does harm environmental and human well-being. So the hope really is, again, to have this conversation build and grow, bring more voices in and have more momentum, and sort of join the larger movement towards greater justice, toward all of us. So, as I think we all know here as designers, there's so much symbolic in light and darkness, right? And when we're designing an interior space, we're very aware of how it's lit and how people will experience it, because it impacts how people feel, how they interact with each other, what they do, and so really this is a powerful medium. So we know also that just as good light is important, people really benefit from having control over how much brightness, how much light they get. And so especially in interior environments where people may be spending a lot of time in a space, if they're in a work environment, they might not have control over that, the amount of light that they're getting. And it's important for the design to already be considering them. So I'd like to maybe just bring this up. What is good lighting, right? In this context, we're defining good lighting as well-designed day lighting and electric lighting that ultimately provides a positive occupant experience. It's the appropriate intensity, color, and distribution for the facility and for the activities, by the people who spend the most time in these spaces. Good lighting is attractive. It's easily controlled to enable needed variability. It supports visual acuity and circadian health. It's affordable, efficient, sustainable, and ultimately it's an investment in occupant satisfaction, well-being, and productivity. And we know, as an industry, we know how to deliver good lighting, and we often try to deliver exceptional lighting, beautiful lighting in spaces. But really, as an industry too, our knowledge and experience often only benefit a small proportion of all the buildings out there. So much of our time, our technology and talent serves more privileged folks who can afford it. And, Shelley, brought up these fantastic cases where, I think there can be this sense in the lighting industry that we're brought in as consultants mainly on these larger kind of luxury projects that have a huge budget. I think it's so beautiful and so critical for lighting to be considered in smaller local projects where, budget's a major constraint, but, can often be a creative constraint where people feel like they've gotten so much value out of what they're investing. And in the context of light justice, good lighting means more than just human-centric, which is important, but really these spaces should be occupant empowered and empowering. Ideally, lighting design for a space and the interior design for a space emerges from direct engagement with occupants to understand their preferences and needs. And Shelley's examples are so wonderful there, talking with the folks, not only the owners of the space, but understanding their relationship with their staff, how they're considering their staff, their work hours, their workspace. In terms of occupant empowered and empowering design, this is especially critical in public facilities, so schools, offices, housing, senior living, healthcare, community centers, courthouses, and incarceration facilities. Again, where workers or students or inhabitants, they spend most or all of their time. Census records do indicate that public facilities like these are disproportionately occupied by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, who are vulnerable to the hazards of inadequate and poor quality building design and systems, including poor quality interior design and lighting. So, I think it's important to call this out as institutional and infrastructural discrimination, not so much the decisions often of an individual, but this larger framework that is worth looking at and questioning. And, it also has been encouraging recently to see how in the design community, interior design, and architecture, and lighting design, we're talking more not only about environmental equity, as it relates to the natural environment, but how environmental and social equity are really linked. The meaningful question, I think, for sustainability in design is no longer how little energy can we use. I think looking at material health is so important, right? And looking at occupant impact is so important. So the larger question, I think the updated question should be, what lighting, what design is appropriate for a space, mitigates damage to life on our planet, and best serves its occupants and those who are impacted by it. And I do believe that probably all of us here have believed for a long time that design has the capacity to create positive change, right? I think more than anything, that's what draws people to design, is knowing the power that it has in elevating somebody's quality of life and improving somebody's experience. I think especially in the public realm and in these public spaces, design really does end up having an outsized impact on people's lives daily. I love this quote by Isabella Creatura: "Light's ability to characterize space as either appealing or unappealing furthers divisions that already exist between rich and poor." Because I think it calls out that, it's often, we're basically inheriting a larger system, right? We're inheriting a longer timeline in history. And so understanding the existing divisions that exist gives us more information as we're making decisions to question them, to try to challenge them, and maybe even counteract them. And Celeste Henry, indeed, in the US, the urban poor, the Black and the brown communities corralled in the inner city by processes of white flight and racial criminalization have suffered under this trajectory of illumination. And I'll just take a moment. I do also want to be respectful of everybody's time here. So appreciative that you're using your lunch break for this. I'm just going to give a very, very quick run through of some of the history of lighting. This is going to be mostly outdoors, but again, I think it's important to just introduce in this conversation as we move indoors. So beneficial darkness, I think, especially in recent years, has been called out, as with the advent of LED technology, the question isn't, can we get enough light? Like, we absolutely have no issue producing a lot of light with LED technology. And so we're sort of reaching the other end of that pendulum swing where it's like, okay, if we have enough, how do we bring it back to levels of lighting, kinds of lighting that really do serve people and address visual needs and visual health. And unfortunately, we see that marginalized neighborhoods and marginalized communities, they tend to experience a bit of the sort of negative impacts before things are corrected and brought back to balance. And it takes longer for issues to be addressed. Let's see. One when I think, certainly I learned about this, I think much more recently than I wish. There's a long history of lighting being used as a tool, as an oppressive tool in not only our society here in the US, but all around the world. So let's see. So you may or may not have heard of the lantern laws, which were used historically to suppress Black bodies through racialized surveillance. They were really used as a tool it was in the 18th century. They were used in New York City and elsewhere in the US, demanding Black, mixed race, and indigenous people to carry lanterns with them if they walked about a city after sunset. I mean, it was mandatory. They had to carry a lantern with them if they were not in the company of a white person. And the idea was that, they needed to be monitored more carefully. Anybody who did not do this could be arrested, and any white person was deputized to stop somebody who was not just somebody of color who was not walking around with a lit candle or a lantern after dark. Another historic way that nighttime behavior has been oppressed are these sundown towns. There was a wonderful documentary that came out a little while ago talking about the Green Book, which was a resource for people of color in the US to navigate the US around these sundown towns. So sundown towns were all white communities, neighborhoods, or counties that excluded people of color through the use of discriminatory laws, harassment, threats, or use of violence to control their nocturnal behavior. There were posted and verbal warnings issued to Blacks that they might not be allowed to, or they might be allowed to work or travel in a community during daytime, but had to leave by sundown, hence the name. Historians do estimate that there were up to 10,000 sundown towns in the US between 1890 and 1960. They were mostly in the Midwest, but also in the Northeast, such as in Massachusetts and Connecticut. So the Green Book, again, was a published guide for African Americans to navigate the country and avoid these sundown towns and find friendly lodging. And this does lead us to, today where you can continue to see the legal framework for oppressive policies like stop and frisk. These were established really long before our contemporary era. Much more recent example of this is the Omnipresence program, which you may have heard about. It's a New York City police program, which installed diesel-generated powered floodlights in certain parts of the city, mostly housing developments in Black or brown communities, ostensibly at the time to support the police departments there after a stop and frisk was declared illegal. And it was initially introduced as a temporary measure. The idea was to offer a tool to law enforcement, but ended up basically becoming permanent installments in these neighborhoods. These are sources of pollution because they're diesel generator powered. They're incredibly loud. They're incredibly bright. I mean, nobody would design an actual street lamp that looked like that. And they have become, I mean, they've become incredibly oppressive to the people who live in those communities. You can see what they actually look like here. And unfortunately, I think this conversation has been really important to see the development of, right? Because on the one hand, yes, we want our streets, we want our communities, we want them to be safe. People who live there want them to be safe too. The question is, what are the tools used? How do we make these places safe? And I think it's very clear that, when lighting is used as a tool thoughtlessly, the impact that it has is also thoughtless. And in this case, these lights were never meant to be in people's residential communities. These are for, disaster scenes where, you need a lot of light temporarily. They're for highway construction where, again, they're not designed for human vision. They're designed for, extraordinary measures. Let's see here.
Leah, I just
Uh-huh.
want to give you the
Yes.
we're
Okay.
almost at time, so if you just want to wrap up, I'm going to
Awesome. Thank
suggest
you.
people that want to stay for Q&A, please do. We initially had this going to 12:45, but if people are willing to stay for another 5, 10, 15 minutes, it would be great to get some questions. So Leah, I'll let you wrap up though.
Thank you so much, Maeve. Okay, so I will sort of breeze through the next slides, but please do feel free to go to lightjustice.org. We have a lot of great resources that are sharing a lot of this history. Let me move forward a little bit. So I think the crux of this is, and I love this quote by Antoinette D. Carroll, systems of oppression, injustices, and inequities are designed, therefore they can be redesigned. So there really is a place for our considerations as designers to be contributing to greater equity. Very quickly, spaces inside are also, sorry, let me scroll down to find my next notes. Okay, so indoors, and I think Shelley did a wonderful job of mentioning these. When we're considering justice in interior lighting, we're considering their access to daylight and views. Unjust interior lighting has no consideration for intensity, color, or control. Efficiency and maybe security are prioritized over visual comfort. Low cost, low bid systems with poor performance may abound, and then also a lack of maintenance or difficulty with maintenance. They're really, and again, tracing back the history, the historic inequities in interior design go back to class, the sort of upstairs, downstairs dichotomies. The Industrial Revolution bringing light indoors mainly to extend the workday and increase productivity, rather than bringing it indoors to serve human vision after dark. So you see the differences between, say, the cubicle farms, the 80s and 90s, lighting in interior spaces where production is prioritized over human comfort. And then you have, the classic kind of examples of the corner office, access to daylight, access to ideal light being offered to those with power. And also underfunded public facilities, they tend to suffer poor quality lighting as well. And so we're not only looking at, places of incarceration, but schools that are underfunded. We're looking at post offices. We're looking at places where, again, there's less attention to the interior environment for those who spend all their time there. So wanted to thank Shelley for bringing up some of these ways that we can begin to consider, and so many of us already are considering equity indoors for our clients and for the people who are using our spaces. We can engage in an occupant empowering design justice. We can prioritize the vulnerable, and we can advocate for equitable interior design. We can prioritize daylight and views, invest in back of house spaces, as we saw in Shelley's projects, seeking low bid projects, recognizing excellence in equitable lighting and supporting each other in that way, and putting these thoughts and considerations into process and practice. So thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so glad to speak with you, and really looking forward to being inspired by your projects.
Thank you, Leah and Shelley, so much. And I did a DM to Shelley maybe earlier. I had some camera issues, so that's why I was off. But I was inspired by all of what I had seen and heard, and particularly the historic connotation of how it has been a detriment to the underserved population, and how lighting really does help transcend and encourage the community to grow and be safer and be more comfortable. And it's something that we all can be of a positive reaction to, both indoors and outdoors. So it's really, really inspiring. Yeah. For any of you who are wanting to stay on for a few minutes, we certainly encourage a Q&A session. You can write your comments in the chat. Lisa Reed is on, who was one of our main speakers last week, and she's fantastic. She wrote, and you might have touched a little bit on this, on the context of the Celeste Henry quote. Was she addressing light pollution?
That was way back, Leah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She
Yeah.
talked the impact of light on, I forget how she said it, but on city neighborhoods or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So her quote is on the communities, especially the communities of color in the inner cities, suffering from a trajectory of illumination. And I think that's it does speak to light pollution, maybe adjacently, but it's more, I think, speaking to the gap in attention spent addressing the illumination of their neighborhoods. We see that especially in street lighting and public street lighting. So obviously, public street lighting that doesn't consider light pollution tends to have impact not only on the people on the ground, but also on light pollution and the natural world. I think maybe later on I'll just pop a little link in the chat to connect to some of her work. But yeah, I think it's just the larger question of where attention and resources going. So often in the past, they haven't been going to vulnerable communities, and this has outsized impact, a negative impact.
Sure. And I wouldn't want to dwell too long on exterior, because I know we wanted to talk about interior lighting today, but I think it's kind of interesting that you see both extremes. You see not enough light being provided, and then you see other cases where just like throwing more light at it as if that's going to make it better, and it's neither, right? So
Right. And honestly, the omnipresence example, when you throw too much light on outdoors, there's so much light bleed indoors. There are there are also examples of street lighting that hasn't been well considered, being too close to a window and just basically blasting the interior space of some of these larger housing facilities. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for that question and answer as well. And I can say too, with lighting, a little bit from the evening program last week in terms of celebrating certain areas of a cityscape. A great example is outside City Park in downtown, where some of the lighting is a great asset to the Mill Creek statue that gives homage to the citizens of that neighborhood, and really celebrating those people, that population, and doing it in not a harsh way, but also hopefully continuing that story and progressing better for the neighboring area. So it's good.
I have a question. Um, when I was reading the equitable lighting article, I was fascinated to read the part about how, the energy efficiency movement has resulted in this inequity in lighting based on what people can afford that didn't used to exist. And, as the Missouri Gateway Green Building Council, we are obviously very concerned with energy efficiency and advancing green building technologies, but part of our mission is also fostering and advancing healthy places. So how do we reconcile that? How do designers reconcile that in interior environments? What are strategies, where budget is a big restriction? How can we advocate for quality lighting in these spaces where budget is usually presented as a barrier?
Shelley, I know I heard you mention one good way was
Which way is that?
which was using windows or natural light is almost free source of light.
For sure. Yeah. And I am in a unique situation that we do design here and we also do construction. And we probably build maybe 70% of our projects. So when we go into the value engineering process, we have probably a little more control than other architects and designers do. And we're lucky because we can probably advocate for, the kitchen lighting or other lighting situations that, for in our minds, or at least off the table, it's like, okay, if you're going to save like 50 cents a fixture or something like that, we're not even going to bring it up because that's not even a massive savings, But I also do a good amount of residential interior design. And we are not picky. We will talk to anybody. I will go into people's homes. I don't care, but I cannot tell you how many times I go into someone's living room. They have their ceiling fan and they have some LED light bulb from Home Depot in there that's got to be like 5,000 Kelvin or something like that. And it's like walking into a laboratory. It's like, I'm going to write this down, 3,000 Kelvin, go to the hardware store, because it's like, it just something as simple as that just improves your quality of life so tremendously much. Just like taking a walk at night in the neighborhood. It's like, oh my gosh, what is that blue light coming out of that living room right there on the street? I think some of it comes down to education too, just a little bit,
I fully agree. And education may be key, right? And I think so many of the lighting decisions that are made are by people with a place that needs to be lit that they have a little control over. And so what do? They go to Home Depot or they look something up. But I think this is really one huge area where the lighting design industry could step up and find a way to offer greater public education. We see that in a lot of other industries over time. There's been so much public education, and I think it's time for, especially with the advent of LED technology, which is so confusing. The metrics that people have been used to. How do you choose a bulb? It's wattage. Well, now it's not wattage. So is it a wattage equivalent? And like, what do these numbers mean? And what even is CRI? I mean, really, I think there have been like individual efforts by larger corporations and manufacturers to offer some information education with their fixtures, but I think a concerted effort is overdue, because yeah, as Shelley said, like there are these smaller interventions that you can make, and you're like, if only we could do this on a larger scale. Some of my favorite projects personally are ones that I do here locally in Seattle, where kind of supplementing my work on larger projects, I've been seeking out community centers. I've been seeking out small businesses and keeping my eyes open and my ears open. And where, as a lighting designer, I can offer just a little bit of advocacy for them, basically offering some information or giving them some information with which they can be empowered to make better decisions themselves. I feel like that is as much my work as anything else.
Well, I know we are getting close to 1 p.m. If any of you have any follow-up questions, feel free to put those in the chat, or otherwise we will definitely provide Leah and Shelley's contact information. But if both of you have a closing remark, I'd love to hear what you both think, because we can certainly keep this going all afternoon, just the learning aspect of it. But yes, I'd love to hear final thoughts from both of you.
I could start. I just want to say thank you all for, I mean, I think this is such an exciting milestone to participate in for you all in St. Louis. I mean, I feel so encouraged. I'm thinking like, how do I get something like this going in Seattle? You know, it feels like these local efforts to galvanize you know, mutual support and dialogue are really, I mean, really what should be happening. So thank you again. I'm so inspired by you all. And Shelley, I love the projects that you shared. I mean, I'm excited. I'm hoping that, I'm blanking on the name of it, but the recent project that you said you're hoping after it's built, you can share as a model for what kitchens could be. I mean, I really am so excited for you to share that, because I think, again, so much of this is not like how to, you know, invent the wheel again, each individually, but how can we share things that we are doing and learning from, and you know, and be sort of offering that to each other.
Thank you, Leah. And I just have to say, like, this has been so beneficial for me, because this is one of those things that it's like, why did you get into design in the first place? And so much of it is to how to make the most good come from your work, and how do the most, you know, I'm not articulating this well because I didn't have this typed down. But like, how do you make the most people benefit from the work that you do? And considering, you know, the different people who are occupying spaces, and just how to elevate the quality of life and the work experience for people is so, so critical. And I'm thankful for you for starting, you know, this movement. And I love the fact that you pulled so much history out of it too, because that's my training, is actually history. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's fantastic. Yes. You know, so many things, you know, if we just know our own history, there's reasons for why we do things and such. But thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me, because, like, I'll be honest, when David emailed me about this, I was like, no, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. So, but I'm glad that, you know, the work that we do every day can tangentially at least kind of coincide with the light and justice movement. So thank you all for having me.
I could think of a perfect blend. So thank you both likewise. And May, thank you so much for always what you do for the council and the coordinating efforts too. Yes. But I encourage all of you to go on the website for future educational programs, both lunch breaks and evening programs. If you are interested in joining the education committee, I have to do a plug for that. We normally meet the first Tuesday night, 5:30 to 7:30. We're taking a break in March, but if you're interested in April, send us an email. You can put it in the chat, so forth, and we'll get you well up to speed. But until next time, which I hope will be very soon, have a great weekend and keep making Missouri Green Buildings great. Oh, and Leah, go ahead.
Thank you so much, David. I just wanted to throw in the chat really quick. If anybody's interested, we have an online and in-person hybrid Light and Justice Indoor Symposium coming up on April 5th. It was just announced. It's been sort of in the works for a while, so that link is in there. But yes, thank you so much, David.
Awesome.
Thank
And
you all.
we'll cross post that, Leah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Take great care. Enjoy this beautiful weather in St. Louis and Leah.
I
Hopefully it's
know.
wonderful in Seattle too. Perfect.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.